It was 2:47 a.m. when Dr. Sarah Quinn heard the words that would end her career. "He's gone," Dr. Preston Sterling announced, stepping back from the trauma bay. Blood pooled beneath his Italian leather shoes, $800 Ferragamos that he'd complained about ruining just minutes earlier. "Call it. Time of death, 2:47. The patient on the table was still warm. His heart monitor showed a faint, irregular rhythm. Not flatline, not yet. But Sterling had already stripped off his gloves, tossing them into the biohazard bin with the casual indifference of someone discarding a failed lottery ticket. Sarah's hands trembled as she stared at the monitor. Not from fear, not from age, from rage. "His pressure's 40/20, she said quietly. He's not viable," Sterling cut her off. "Severed femoral artery, ruptured spleen, grade 4 liver lac, possible aortic injury. Even if we could stabilize him, which we can't, he'd be brain dead from hypoxia. I'm not wasting ore time on a corpse." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead with that migraine-inducing frequency Sarah had learned to ignore during her 23 years in medicine. The smell of blood, metallic, sharp, mixed with the acrid tang of cauterized flesh, filled her nostrils. The ventilator continued its mechanical breathing. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. She looked down at the patient. 32 years old, according to his chart. Construction worker. 2 kids. His wife was in the waiting room. 7 months, pregnant with their 3rd. "I can save him," Sarah said. Sterling laughed. Actually laughed. "You? The 60-year-old ER reject who can barely hold a scalpel with those arthritic hands? The hospital only keeps you around because we're short-staffed. You're a liability, Quinn. Now step aside." He turned to leave. Sarah looked at the clock, at the monitor, at her trembling hands. Then she made a choice that would change everything. "Get out of my trauma bay," she said. What nobody could have known, was that those trembling hands had once performed a 17-hour surgery in a tent in Kandahar while mortars fell around her. That her arthritis came from carrying wounded soldiers through mountain passes. That the 60-year-old ER reject was once called the ghost surgeon and had a silver star in a box she never talked about. But they were about to find out. 6 months earlier, Sarah had arrived at St. Jude's Medical Center with a resume that raised no eyebrows and a recommendation letter that was merely adequate. She wore sensible shoes with worn-down heels. Her gray hair was pulled back in a simple bun. She looked like someone's grandmother, not someone who'd once commanded a forward surgical team in one of the most dangerous war zones on Earth. That was exactly the point. St. Jude's was a level 1 trauma center in downtown Chicago, gleaming glass and steel, where the wealthy came to have their cosmetic procedures and the broken came to die. It sat on the border between the Gold Coast and the desperate, serving both with equal architectural indifference. Sarah worked the night shift in the ER, not because she wanted to, though the quiet hours suited her, but because it was the only position available for someone of her advanced age and limited recent experience. Never mind that her experience included trauma surgery that would make most civilian doctors vomit. The 12-year gap in her resume, marked simply as personal leave, was enough to raise concerns. "Dr. Quinn?" The voice belonged to Nurse Jennifer Walsh, 24, fresh out of nursing school, perpetually exhausted. "Room 3 needs a consult. Possible appendicitis." Sarah nodded, grabbing the chart. Her knees protested as she stood, another gift from Afghanistan from the time she'd jumped from a burning helicopter and landed wrong. She'd refused the knee replacement surgery, didn't trust anyone else's hands. Room 3 contained a teenager, 16, clutching his stomach and trying not to cry in front of his mother. "Hi, Marcus," Sarah said, reviewing his vitals. "Tell me where it hurts." As she examined him, gentle palpation, checking for rebound tenderness, McBurney's point, she was aware of Dr. Sterling passing by the room. He paused, watching through the window with that smirk she'd come to recognize. "Quinn's still here?" he said loudly to Dr. Robert Chen, his resident. "I thought HR was finally going to cut the dead weight." Chen laughed nervously. He was 31, ambitious, terrified of disappointing Sterling. Sarah ignored them, focusing on Marcus. "Not appendicitis," she told his mother. "Mesenteric adenitis. Viral inflammation of the lymph nodes. Painful but not dangerous. It'll resolve on its own in a few days. I'll prescribe some pain management." Relief flooded the mother's face. "Thank you, doctor." "That's what I'm here for." As she left the room, Sterling was waiting. "Mesenteric adenitis," he said, arms crossed. "Seriously, Quinn? That's a diagnosis of exclusion. You should have admitted him for observation. That's protocol." "Protocol written by lawyers, not doctors," Sarah said evenly. "The kid doesn't need surgery. He doesn't need admission. He needs rest and fluids." "You know what your problem is?" Sterling stepped closer. He was tall, 6'2" to her 5'6", and he used every inch to intimidate. "You think your years give you wisdom. They don't. They give you outdated knowledge and failing reflexes. Medicine evolves. You didn't." Sarah met his gaze. In another life, She'd stared down Taliban fighters. Sterling's cologne-soaked arrogance was child's play. Is there something specific you need, Dr. Sterling? Yeah, don't practice medicine above your competence level. Stick to splints and stitches. Leave the real medicine to real doctors. He walked away, Chen trailing behind like a remora following a shark. Jennifer appeared at Sarah's elbow. I hate him, she whispered. He's brilliant, actually, Sarah said. Graduated top of his class at Johns Hopkins. Surgical skills are exceptional. Published in The Lancet twice. Then why is he such an... Because brilliance and character aren't the same thing. Sarah returned to the nurse's station, and the system rewards the former while ignoring the latter. The rest of the shift passed in the usual rhythm. Chest pain that was anxiety, a broken wrist from a skateboarding accident, an elderly woman with pneumonia. Sarah treated them all with the same careful attention, documenting everything, following every protocol. At 7 a.m., as she was gathering her things, she overheard Sterling in the locker room. I give Quinn 3 more months, he was saying. Maybe less. Did you see her hands shake during that IV placement yesterday? Malpractice waiting to happen? I've already talked to Dr. Morrison about it. Dr. Morrison? The hospital. Administrator. Sterling's former fraternity brother. Sarah quietly closed her locker and left through the back exit. The Chicago morning was cold, November wind cutting through her thin jacket. She walked 3 blocks to the bus stop, carrying a lunchbox with tomorrow's dinner already packed inside. The other doctors drove luxury cars. Sarah took public transit. The other doctors went home to expensive condos. Sarah had a studio apartment in Rogers Park where the radiator clanged all night. But none of them had what she had. A Purple Heart, a Silver Star, and the knowledge that she'd saved more lives than Sterling would in his entire career. She just had to remember why she'd chosen to fade into the background. The bus arrived. Sarah climbed aboard, found a seat near the back, and closed her eyes. Behind her closed lids, she could still see the tent, the sand, the blood, the faces of the soldiers she'd saved and the ones she hadn't. She was still haunted by them. Every single day. Dr. Preston Michael Sterling III came from a family where 3 actually meant something. His grandfather had been a pioneering cardiac surgeon. His father sat on the board of 3 major hospitals. The Sterling name opened doors that most doctors spent decades trying to unlock. He was 34, impossibly handsome in that way that made nurses giggle and patients trust him instantly. Dark hair, perfect teeth, a jawline that belonged on a cologne advertisement. He wore Armani suits under his white coat and drove a Tesla Model S that cost more than Sarah made in a year. And he was, despite everything, an exceptional surgeon. That was the cruel irony. Sterling's arrogance wasn't entirely unjustified. His hands were steady, his decisions quick, his success rate enviable. At 34, he'd already performed over 500 major surgeries with a complication rate well below the national average, but brilliance had made him cruel. Morning, people, Sterling announced as he entered the trauma bay for morning rounds. It was 7:30 a.m., the shift change, where night staff overlapped with day staff. Sarah was technically off duty, but stayed for rounds. It was how she kept track of her patients. Let's talk about last night's train wreck, Sterling continued, pulling up digital charts on the monitor. 30-year-old male, motorcycle versus SUV, multiple fractures, internal bleeding. Dr. Quinn here? He gestured at Sarah with mock respect. Wanted to send him home with Tylenol. Nervous laughter rippled through the residence. I recommended admission for observation, Sarah corrected calmly, which is exactly what happened. After I overruled you and ordered a CT that showed a grade 2 splenic laceration. You're welcome, by the way, for preventing a lawsuit. Sarah said nothing. Arguing was pointless. Sterling controlled the narrative, the residents, the administration. The next case, Sterling continued. 55-year-old woman, chest pain, EKG showed normal sinus rhythm with nonspecific ST changes, Sarah said. Troponins were negative. Likely anxiety attack, but we admitted for overnight observation because of family history. She was discharged this morning. Wow, look at that. Quinn can read a chart. Sterling's smile was poisonous. Maybe next week we'll teach you to use the defibrillator. More laughter. Sarah noticed Jennifer Walsh's face flush with anger, but the young nurse kept quiet. Speaking up against Sterling was career suicide. The rounds continued for another hour. Sterling took every opportunity to undermine Sarah, correcting decisions that didn't need correcting, questioning judgments that were sound, making snide comments about her age, her appearance, her outdated methods. Finally, mercifully, it ended. Dr. Quinn, Sterling said as everyone dispersed. A word? They stood alone in the trauma bay. Morning sun streamed through the windows, making the sterile surfaces gleam. I'm going to be direct, Sterling said. You're a liability. Your hands shake. Your decision-making is overly cautious. You're slow, you're old, and frankly, you're making the department look bad. I've had 0 complications in 6 months, Sarah replied. Because you don't do anything challenging. You're glorified triage. A trained monkey could do your job. Then why are we having this conversation? Sterling's smile turned ugly. Because I'm taking over as medical director next month. And when I do, I'm restructuring the department. We're bringing in young talent, doctors who understand modern medicine, doctors who don't need reading glasses to see an IV. I see. Sarah's voice remained level. Is there anything else? Yeah. Start looking for another job, because in 30 days, you won't have this one. He walked out, leaving Sarah standing in the empty trauma bay. She looked down at her hands. They were trembling, not from fear, not from age, from the memory of a different trauma bay, 7,000 miles away, where trembling hands had held together the severed brachial artery of a 19-year-old private while mortars exploded close enough to shake the tent poles. She'd saved that kid's life. His name was Marcus Reeves. He'd written her letters for 5 years after she'd returned stateside. The last one had included a photo of him holding his newborn daughter. Thank you for giving me this, the card had said. I wouldn't be here without you. Sarah closed her eyes, taking a slow breath. 30 days. She could survive 30 days. The inevitable happened on a Tuesday. The ER was slammed. A 5-car pileup on the Kennedy Expressway had filled every trauma bay. Sarah was managing a patient with a pneumothorax when she heard Sterling's voice rise above the chaos. Quinn, trauma 2, now. She quickly inserted the chest tube. Smooth, practiced, no hesitation, despite her shaking hands, and rushed to trauma 2. The scene was controlled chaos. A 32-year-old male, construction accident, had fallen 3 stories onto rebar. The metal rod had entered through his lower right abdomen and exited near his shoulder blade. The paramedics had done the right thing, left the rebar in place, stabilized it, transported immediately. But the man was dying. Pressure's dropping, Jennifer called out. 60/40. Tachycardic 140, another nurse added. Sterling was at the head of the bed, assessing. Okay, listen up. This is a multi-system trauma. Obvious penetrating injury to abdomen and thorax, probable liver lack, possible vascular injury, definite pneumothorax. Sarah, we need to get him to OR immediately, Sarah interrupted. He's bleeding out internally. Every minute we wait. I'm aware, thank you. Sterling's voice dripped with condescension. As I was saying before I was interrupted, Sarah, prep him for transport. Start 2 large bore IVs, push ONEG blood, and call the OR. The rest of you, with me. We need to stabilize before transport. Sarah moved quickly, her hands steady despite what Sterling thought. She established IV access, 18 gauge in each antecubital vein, and started running blood and crystalloids wide open. The patient's name was David Chen, 32 years old, wedding ring on his left hand. Wallet photo showed 2 little kids. Pressure's still dropping, Jennifer said, urgently. 50/30. Damn it, Sterling muttered. He's not going to make it to OR. We need to remove the rebar here and control the bleeding. No! Sarah's voice cut through the noise. If you remove that rebar without vascular control, he'll exsanguinate in seconds. The rebar is tamponating the injury. We transport with it in place and remove it in OR where we have proper... I didn't ask for your opinion, Quinn. Sterling's eyes flashed. I'm the trauma surgeon. This is my call. We remove it here, control the bleeding, then transport. Dr. Sterling, with all due respect, that's... Are you arguing with me? The trauma bay went silent. Everyone stared. Sarah looked at David Chen, at his falling pressure, at the rebar protruding from his body. Yes, she said quietly. I'm arguing with you. Because you're wrong. And he'll die if you do this. Sterling's face turned red. Get out. Dr. Sterling. Get out. You're off this case. Jennifer, call security. Have Dr. Quinn removed from my trauma bay. Sarah stood her ground. I'm not leaving this patient. Then you're fired. Effective immediately. Security. 2 security guards appeared. Arthur and Eddie, both of whom Sarah had treated for various minor ailments over the months. They looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, Arthur said softly, please, don't make this harder. Sarah looked at David Chen one more time. His pressure was 40/20. His lips were turning blue. She stepped back. I'm sorry, she whispered to the patient. Then, louder to Sterling, his death is on you. Get her out of here, Sterling snapped. Arthur and Eddie escorted Sarah out. Behind her, she heard Sterling ordering the rebar removed. She heard the gush of blood. She heard the alarms. She heard Jennifer scream. And then she heard nothing but Sterling shouting orders that were too late, too panicked, too wrong. Sarah stood in the hallway, Arthur and Eddie flanking her uncertainly. Ma'am, Arthur said, we need to take you to HR. Through the trauma bay window, Sarah watched the catastrophe unfold. The moment Sterling had removed the rebar, David Chen's blood pressure had crashed. The metal had been plugging a severed section of his inferior vena cava, the large vein that returns blood to the heart. Without it, Chen was essentially an open faucet. Sterling was doing everything wrong. He'd called for clamps, but he was clamping blindly, not visualizing the injury. He'd called for more. Blood, but you can't refill a bucket with a hole in it. He'd called for vascular surgery, but the vascular surgeon was in another OR 40 minutes away. David Chen had maybe 5 minutes. Sarah made her decision in less than one. "I'm sorry," she said to Arthur and Eddie. Then she turned and ran back into the trauma bay. "Quinn, I told you," Sterling started. Sarah ignored him. She pushed past him, stepping up to the table. Blood was everywhere, pooling on the floor, soaking through. Her shoes, spattering the monitors. "Jennifer," Sarah said calmly, "I need a scalpel, number 10 blade." "Don't you dare," Sterling snarled. "Guards." But Eddie and Arthur were still in the hallway, frozen, watching through the window. Jennifer hesitated for exactly 2 seconds. Then she slapped the scalpel into Sarah's palm. What happened next took 4 minutes and 37 seconds. To everyone watching, it seemed both impossibly fast and terrifyingly slow. Sarah's hands didn't shake. Not once. She extended the wound with one clean incision, a midline laparotomy, sternum to pubis. The skin parted like butter under her blade. "Retractors," she said. A resident, Dr. Patel, who'd been standing uselessly to the side, grabbed a Balfour retractor and positioned it. Sarah cranked it open, exposing the abdominal cavity. Blood. So much blood it was impossible to see anything. "Suction!" Sarah commanded. Jennifer was already there, Yankauer suction in hand. She suctioned, and while Sarah's hands dove into the cavity. This was the part that separated good surgeons from great ones. When you can't see, you have to feel. You have to know anatomy so well that your hands become your eyes. Sarah's fingers found the inferior vena cava by touch alone. The tear was exactly where she'd expected, just below the renal veins, a 3-centimeter laceration that was pouring blood like a burst pipe. "Satinsky clamp," she said. Silence. "Satinsky clamp!" she roared. Dr. Patel. Scrambled, found it, handed it over. Sarah placed the clamp with absolute precision, partially occluding the vena cava just enough to slow the bleeding, but not enough to completely block venous return. It was a move that required perfect spatial awareness, perfect touch, perfect... The bleeding slowed to a manageable ooze. "Pressure?" Sarah asked. 70/40, Jennifer said, her voice shaking. Rising, 80/45, 90/50. 4 neoproline suture, double-armed. Someone handed it to her. Sarah didn't even look up to see who. She began to sew. This was where the tremor in her hands should have been catastrophic. Vascular suturing requires absolute steadiness. The vena cava's wall is thin, delicate. One wrong move and you tear it further. But Sarah's hands were rock steady, because she'd done this before. In a tent in Kandahar during a mortar attack, with the lights flickering and the generators dying and a 19-year-old screaming as she'd held his subclavian artery together with her bare fingers. In a field hospital in Helmand Province, during a firefight so close she could hear the bullets hitting the wall outside, as she'd performed an emergency thoracotomy with a headlamp and a prayer. In a Black Hawk helicopter flying nap of the earth to avoid SAMs, as she'd intubated a wounded ranger while the pilot threw the bird into evasive maneuvers. This was quiet. No mortars. No gunfire. No screaming. This was easy. Her sutures were perfect. Small, even bites of tissue. Perfect spacing. Perfect tension. She ran the suture in a continuous pattern, closing the laceration from inside to out, over and over, each throw of the knot exactly the same. "Pressure's 110/70, Jennifer breathed. "Oh my God, it's working." Sarah tied off the suture. "Release the clamp. Slowly." Dr. Patel released the Satinsky clamp. The repair held. No bleeding. Sarah allowed herself one breath of relief. Then she continued. "Let's check the liver." Her hands moved through the abdomen with the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Grade 3 lack to the right lobe. Pack it. 4 lap pads. She packed the liver injury, applying pressure to control the venous oozing. "Spleen?" "Looks intact," Dr. Patel said, finding his voice. "Bowel?" "No perforations I can see." "Good. We need to get him to OR to finish this properly. But he'll make it to OR now." She stepped back, finally looking up. The entire trauma bay was staring at her. Sterling's face was the color of old snow. "Dr. Quinn," he said quietly. "What the hell did you just do?" "Saved his life," Sarah replied, "which is what you should have done." You're not a surgeon. You're an ER doctor. How did you..." Sarah stripped off her gloves. They made a wet slap in the biohazard bin. "Jennifer, call OR. Tell them we have a patient coming up. Critical but stable. They'll need vascular on standby to check my repair. Dr. Patel, go with him. Don't let anyone touch that IVC until vascular takes a look." "Yes, ma'am," Patel said. Sarah turned to leave. "Wait," Sterling said. I need to know. Where did you learn to do that?" Sarah paused at the door. She looked back at him with eyes that had seen things he couldn't imagine. "Somewhere you'll never go," she said. Then she walked out. Sarah made it to the locker room before the adrenaline crash hit. Her hands started shaking, really shaking now, the tremor that came after, not during. She sat on the bench, pressed her palms together, and waited for it to pass. It always passed. Eventually. The door opened. Jennifer Walsh stepped in, still wearing her bloody scrubs. "Dr. Quinn," she started, then stopped. "I don't even know what to say." "Don't say anything," Sarah replied quietly. "Go home. Get some rest." "That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. You saved his life. Sterling was going to let him die, and you just... Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. "Where did you learn to do that?" Sarah stood, opening her locker. Inside was her civilian clothes, her bus pass, a photo she kept taped to the door. The photo showed her in desert camouflage, standing with a team of soldiers. She was younger, harder, her hair dark instead of gray. Behind her was a tent with a red cross. In front of her were the men and women she'd saved. Jennifer saw the photo. "Oh my God, you were military." "Don't," Sarah said, softly. "Please. How long? Where did you serve?" Sarah pulled on her jacket, closing the locker without answering. "Go home, Jennifer, and forget what you saw today." "Forget? Dr. Quinn, you're a hero. When people find out..." "Nobody's going to find out." Sarah's voice was firm. "Because you're not going to tell them." "But why? You could..." The door burst open. Dr. Morrison, the hospital administrator, stood in the doorway. Behind him were 2 security supervisors and a woman in a dark suit carrying a briefcase. "Dr. Sarah Quinn?" the woman said. "Yes. I'm Angela Torres, hospital counsel. I need you to come with me." Sarah's heart sank. Here it was. The consequences. "Am I being arrested?" "No, but we need to discuss what happened in Trauma 2. Immediately." The conference room was cold. Everything at St. Jude's was cold. The air conditioning was set to Arctic year-round, as if warmth were unprofessional. Sarah sat on one side of a long table. Across from her sat Dr. Morrison, Angela Torres, and Dr. Martin Hayes, the chief medical officer. At the far end, arms crossed, sat Preston Sterling. "Dr. Quinn," Morrison began, "do you understand the severity of what you did today?" "I saved a man's life," Sarah said. "You assaulted a superior officer." "Dr. Sterling is not my superior officer," Sarah interrupted. "He's a department head. I'm a staff physician. We're colleagues." "You were relieved of duty and ordered to leave," Torres said. "You refused a direct order from the attending physician. A direct order that would have killed the patient." "That's your opinion," Sterling interjected. "My judgment was that the rebar needed to be removed to control the bleeding." Sarah turned to look at him. "Your judgment was wrong. You removed a tamponating foreign body without vascular control. Textbook mistake. First-year resident mistake." Sterling's jaw clenched. "The patient was dying. The patient is alive. Because I stopped you from killing him?" "Enough," Morrison said. "Dr. Quinn, the facts are these. You were dismissed from a trauma case. You were ordered to leave by the attending physician. You refused. You then performed an unauthorized surgical procedure. An emergency laparotomy to control life-threatening hemorrhage," Sarah corrected. "Without supervision, without permission, and without proper credentials." Sarah blinked. "Without proper credentials? You're licensed as an emergency medicine..." "Physician," Torres said, reading from a file. "You have no board certification in surgery. You are not credentialed to perform major surgical procedures at this hospital." "I have board certification in surgery," Sarah said quietly. "And I'm fellowship trained in trauma surgery." The room went silent. Morrison frowned. "That's not in your file?" "Check again." Torres opened her briefcase, pulling out Sarah's employment file. She flipped through it, then frowned. "There's nothing here about surgical training. Just your MD from..." "Wait." She squinted at the page. "This says you graduated medical school in 1997 from Uniformed Services University." "That's correct. That's the military medical school." "Yes." Dr. Hayes leaned forward. "Dr. Quinn, were you a military physician?" Sarah hesitated. Then slowly she nodded. "What branch?" "Army." "And you had surgical training?" "Yes." "Why isn't this in your employment file?" "Because I didn't include it on my application. I applied for an emergency medicine position. That's what my recent experience qualified me for." Sterling laughed sharply. "So what? You're claiming you used to be a surgeon? Where? Some field hospital in Iraq?" Sarah didn't answer. "This is convenient," Sterling continued. "You get caught performing an illegal procedure, so suddenly you're a war hero with secret surgical skills? I never said I was a hero. Then what were you?" Sarah met his gaze. In her eyes was something Sterling had never seen before. Something cold. Something that had witnessed death and dealt it when necessary. "I was a trauma surgeon," she said quietly. 75th Combat Support Hospital, Kandahar, Afghanistan. 2 deployments, 3 years total. I separated from service in 2012. The room was silent. Why didn't you continue surgical practice after separation? Dr. Hayes asked gently. Sarah's jaw tightened. Personal reasons. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Morrison cleared his throat. Regardless of your past credentials, Dr. Quinn, the fact remains that you violated hospital policy. You performed a procedure you're not credentialed for. You defied a direct order from an attending physician. This is grounds for immediate termination. Fine, Sarah said. Fire me. We will, Torres said. But there's the matter of the lawsuit. Sarah's blood went cold. What lawsuit? Mr. Chen's family could sue for unauthorized medical procedures. Even if the outcome was positive, you operated without consent. He was unconscious and dying. Implied consent applies in... That's a legal argument for a courtroom, not a hospital conference room. Torres closed her briefcase. Our recommendation is termination with cause. We'll handle the legal exposure, but you need to go. Today, now. Sarah stood slowly. Her knees protested. Her damn knees that had never been the same after Kandahar. David Chen is alive, she said, quietly. Whatever else happens, remember that. He's alive because I refused to let him die. He's alive because Dr. Sterling's quick thinking stabilized him, Morrison said. That's what will be in the official report. Sarah's eyes widened. You're going to lie? We're going to protect this hospital, Morrison replied. Sterling is a valuable asset. You are not. This is business, Dr. Quinn. Nothing personal. Nothing personal, Sarah repeated hollowly. Security will escort you. To collect your belongings. You have 30 minutes, then you're banned from hospital property. If you return, you'll be arrested for trespassing. Arthur and Eddie appeared in the doorway. They wouldn't meet her eyes. Sarah walked out without another word. The locker room was empty. Sarah packed her things slowly, spare scrubs, personal coffee mug, the photo of her unit. She held the photo for a long moment. Sergeant First Class Marcus Reeves was in that photo. The 19-year-old. Kid whose brachial artery she'd held together while mortars fell. He was standing next to her, grinning that infectious grin, his arm around her shoulder. 6 months after that photo was taken, Marcus had stepped on an IED, both legs gone below the knee. But he'd survived. Last she heard, he was running marathons on prosthetics. Captain Jennifer Ortiz was there too, the helicopter pilot who'd flown into a hot LZ to extract Sarah's team when they'd been overrun. Jenny had been shot, twice on that flight, but landed the bird anyway. And there, in the back row, was Lieutenant Colonel William Chen, her commanding officer. The man who'd taught her that being a good doctor meant more than just knowing medicine. It meant knowing when to follow orders and when to disobey them. He'd given her the Silver Star personally, put it in her hand, and told her she'd earned it 10 times over. She wondered what he'd think of her now, fired for saving a life. Sarah closed the locker, picked up her cardboard box, the universal symbol of failure, and walked out. The November rain was falling hard, Chicago rain, cold and merciless. She stood at the bus stop, water soaking through her jacket, her box getting soggy. A Tesla pulled up. The window rolled down. Sterling. Quinn, he said. I just wanted to say, that was impressive. What you did in there. Really impressive. Sarah stared at him. I mean it, Sterling continued. Those surgical skills were top-notch. Maybe in another life, we could have worked well together. In another life, Sarah said quietly, you would have been my student, and I would have failed you for gross incompetence and lack of basic human decency. Sterling's smile faltered. David Chen is alive despite you, not because of you, Sarah continued, and someday you're going to kill someone with your arrogance. I just hope I'm there to see it. She turned away. Behind her, the Tesla's window rolled up, and the car drove away. The bus arrived. Sarah climbed aboard, found a seat near the back, and closed her eyes. She was 51 years old, unemployed, possibly facing a lawsuit, banned from the only hospital within 20 miles. And somewhere in that hospital, David Chen was alive. It was enough. It had to be enough. 3 days passed. Sarah spent them in her studio apartment watching the rain, drinking coffee that tasted like cardboard, and trying not to think about what came next. Her phone rang. Occasionally. Jennifer Walsh called twice, apologizing, saying she'd been told not to contact Sarah. Dr. Patel called once, whispering that David Chen was out of ICU and doing well, but that everyone had been ordered to sign NDAs about the incident. Sterling was being hailed as a hero. The hospital had put out a press release. Chief surgeon saves construction worker in daring emergency procedure. Sarah didn't read past the headline. On the 4th day, there was a knock at her door. Sarah opened it to find 2 men in dress uniforms. Army. One was a colonel she didn't recognize. The other? Reeves, Sarah breathed. Marcus Reeves grinned. He was older now, 32, not 19. His face had lines that came from pain and hard experience. But that grin was the same. Hello, ma'am, he said. Sarah's knees nearly buckled. What are you doing here? May we come in? The colonel asked. Sarah stepped aside, and they entered her tiny apartment. Marcus moved with a slight limp. The prosthetics were good, but not perfect. "This is Colonel Richard Walsh," Marcus said. "He's with DoD Medical Services." "Ms. Quinn," Walsh began. "It's Doctor," Marcus interrupted. "Sir," Walsh nodded. "Dr. Quinn, we need to talk about what happened at St. Jude's Medical Center." Sarah's stomach dropped. "I don't know what you've heard, but we heard you performed an emergency IVC repair under combat conditions," Walsh said. "Saved a man's life, then got fired for it. It wasn't exactly combat conditions?" "Ma'am," Marcus said gently, "we know what you did, and we know you've been trying to stay off the radar, but someone sent us security footage from the hospital." Sarah blinked. "What?" Walsh pulled out a tablet, tapped it, and turned it toward her. The video was from the trauma bay. It showed everything. Sterling removing the rebar, the catastrophic bleeding, Sarah running back in against orders, the surgery, all of it. "Who sent you this?" "A nurse named Jennifer Walsh. No relation," the colonel added with a small smile. "She thought we should know that one of our own was being treated unjustly." "Jennifer doesn't know I was military." "She does now," Marcus said. "She did some digging, found your service record. Well, the unclassified parts anyway." Sarah sat down heavily. "Why are you here?" Walsh sat across from her. "Dr. Quinn, how much do you know about the current state of military medicine?" "I've been out for 12 years. I know nothing." "We're in trouble," Walsh said bluntly. "Combat medical personnel are stretched thin. The suicide rate among military doctors is at an all-time high. We're losing experienced trauma surgeons to private practice, burnout, PTSD. The ones we have left are exhausted." "I'm sorry to hear that, but I don't see what this has to do with—" "We need you back," Sarah laughed. It was not a happy sound. "I'm 51 years old. I've got arthritis in both knees, and my hands shake from nerve damage. I'm not soldier material anymore." "You were never soldier material," Walsh said. "You were surgeon material, the best we had." Had being the operative word. Marcus leaned forward. "Ma'am, I've been looking for you for years. After I recovered, after I learned to walk again, I tried to find you, to thank you. The Army said you'd separated and couldn't give me contact information. I didn't want to be found." "Why?" Marcus asked quietly. The question hung in the air. Sarah stood, walking to the window. Rain streaked the glass. Outside, Chicago went about its business, indifferent to one old woman's pain. "After my second deployment," she said quietly, "I was reassigned to Walter Reed, Physical Rehabilitation Wing. I was treating wounded soldiers. Guys like you, Marcus. Missing limbs, traumatic brain injuries, PTSD. And I was good at it. Really good." She paused, her hand pressed against the cold glass. "There was a private. 20 years. Old. IED blast. Both legs gone above the knee. Severe burns. I treated him for 6 months. Got him through 15 surgeries. He was healing, getting better. Talking about getting fitted for prosthetics." Her voice cracked. "One night, he wheeled himself into the supply closet and hanged himself with an IV line." Marcus stood. "Ma'am, I found him," Sarah continued. "I was the one who found him. I cut him down. I tried to resuscitate him, but he'd been there too long. And the whole, time I was doing compressions, I kept thinking, I saved his body. I rebuilt his body, but I couldn't save him." Tears ran down her face. "So I left. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't save people just to watch them destroy themselves." The room was silent except for the rain. "His name was Private Daniel Morrison," Sarah said. "He was from Iowa. He liked baseball and wanted to be a teacher." Marcus crossed the room and put his hand on her shoulder. "Ma'am, I know 3 guys from our unit who went through the same thing. Dark places. Really dark. And you know what got them through?" Sarah shook her head. "Remembering the medics and doctors who saved them, remembering that someone gave a damn. You saved my life, ma'am. And I'm not going to lie. There were dark days after I lost my legs. Days I thought about eating a bullet, but every time I got close, I thought about you." He squeezed her shoulder gently. "I thought about how you held my artery together with your bare hands while mortars were falling. How you talked to me the whole time, telling me jokes, telling me about your dog, anything to keep me conscious. How you looked me in the eye and promised I'd live. And I thought, if she cared that much, if she fought that hard, then I owe it to her to keep fighting too." Sarah turned, tears streaming down her face. "I'm alive because of you," Marcus said. "I'm married because of you. I have a daughter because of you. She's 4. Her name is—" "Sarah." Sarah's hand went to her mouth. "You couldn't save everyone," Marcus said gently. "But you saved a lot of us. And we remember." Walsh stood. "Dr. Quinn, we're not asking you to go back to a combat zone. We're asking you to consider a training position. Walter Reed is opening a new trauma surgery program. We need someone to teach the next generation. someone with real experience, someone who won't bullshit them about what they're going to face. I don't know if I can... You performed a vascular repair under pressure 3 days ago, Walsh said. Your hands didn't shake. Your judgment was flawless. You haven't lost it, Doctor. You just forgot you had it. Sarah looked at Marcus. At this man she'd saved when he was just a boy. At the life he'd built because she'd refused to let him die. I need time to think, she said. Take all the time you need, Walsh replied. But we're not the only ones who came to see you today. What do you mean? There was another knock at the door. Sarah opened it. Standing in the hallway were David Chen and his wife. She was visibly pregnant, her hand resting on her belly. David was pale, moving carefully, but alive. Very much alive. Dr. Quinn, he said. I'm David Chen. I don't know if you remember me. I remember, Sarah whispered. They told me you saved my life. After Dr. Sterling said there was no hope. After everyone gave up. You didn't. His wife stepped forward. They fired you for saving my husband, for giving my children their father back. She was crying. David was crying. Sarah was crying. I don't know how to thank you, David said. I don't know what to say except thank you. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for being there. Thank you for being you. He pulled something from his pocket, a folded piece of paper. The nurses told me you were military, that you had a service record. So I pulled some strings. My cousin works at the IEA and found out about you, about what you did, about who you are. He handed her the paper. Sarah unfolded it. It was a photo, a service photo, of her, in dress uniform, receiving the Silver Star from Lieutenant Colonel William Chen, the same William Chen who was David's uncle. Uncle Bill told me about you, David said quietly. He said you were the bravest doctor he ever knew. He said you saved more lives than anyone in the unit. He said you were a legend. Sarah's hands trembled as she held the photo. He died 2 years ago, David continued. But before he did, he told me that if I ever met you, I should tell you something. What? Sarah whispered. He said, tell her the ghost is allowed to rest, but tell her we still need her. The ghost. Her call sign. Her nickname. Because she moved through the battlefield like a ghost, appearing where she was needed, saving lives that shouldn't have been saved, then disappearing again. The ghost surgeon. Walsh stood. Dr. Quinn, I'm going to be direct. We need you. The Army needs you. But more than that, David Chen needed you. And 3 days ago, you proved that you're still who you always were. He placed a card on her table. When you're ready, call me. We'll talk details. Pay, benefits, location, everything. But think about this. You can spend the rest of your career fighting hospitals that don't appreciate you. Or you can come back to where you belong and train the next generation of combat surgeons, people who will remember you, people who will carry on what you started. He saluted. Marcus saluted. Sarah found herself automatically returning it. Then they left, David and his wife thanking her one more time before following. Sarah stood alone in her apartment, holding the photo of her younger self receiving the Silver Star. On the back, in Uncle Bill's handwriting, was a note she'd never seen before. To Captain Sarah Quinn, the ghost surgeon. You saved my men. You saved me. And someday you'll save countless others. Never forget who you are. Never forget why you became a doctor. And never forget, heroes don't retire. They just change battlefields. LTC William Chen. Sarah sat down on her couch and read the note again. And again. And again. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight was breaking through the clouds. For the first time in 12 years, Sarah smiled. A real smile. Sarah called the number on Walsh's card the next morning. I have conditions, she said when he answered. Name them. I don't go back to active combat duty. Training only. Agreed. I want full medical benefits for life. For me and for any veteran I treat who needs help. I'll make it happen. And I want one thing that has nothing to do with the Army. What's that? I want St. Jude's Medical Center to know exactly who they fired. And I want Preston Sterling to know exactly whose career he tried to destroy. Walsh was quiet for a moment. Then, Doctor, I think we can arrange that. How? David Chen's family has filed a formal complaint with the State Medical Board against Dr. Sterling. They have security footage showing him performing a dangerous procedure against the advice of a qualified trauma surgeon. They also have evidence that the hospital falsified records to cover it up. Sarah's heart quickened. The security footage that Jennifer sent you? The very same. We've shared it with the Chen family's attorney. We've also shared it with several news organizations who are very interested in the story of a decorated war veteran being fired for saving a man's life. I don't want publicity, I know, and will protect your privacy as much as possible. But, Dr. Quinn, people need to know what happened. Not just for you. For every other healthcare worker who gets punished for doing the right thing. Sarah took a breath. When does this happen? Tomorrow. The medical board is holding an emergency hearing. Sterling's been ordered to appear, and they've invited you to testify. Me? You're the only witness who can speak to his medical judgment, or lack thereof. Sarah closed her eyes. She'd spent 12 years trying to be invisible, trying to hide from her past, from her reputation, from the weight of all those lives saved and lost. But David Chen was alive, and somewhere Uncle Bill was watching. I'll be there, she said. The Illinois State Medical Board met in a gray building that looked like it had been designed by someone who hated joy. Sarah arrived early, wearing the only professional outfit she owned, a black pantsuit that was slightly too big, sensible flats, her gray hair pulled back in a bun. Jennifer Walsh met her in the lobby. "Dr. Quinn, I'm so glad you came. Did you really send that footage to the Army?" Jennifer nodded. "I knew something was wrong with how they were treating you, and when I found out you were military..." Dr. Quinn, my brother served. He was wounded in Mosul. A combat surgeon saved his life. I know what you people do, what you sacrifice, and what they did to you was wrong. You could lose your job for this. I already did, Jennifer said cheerfully. They fired me yesterday. Apparently, leaking security footage is a violation of hospital policy. Jennifer, it's okay. I'm 24. I'll find another job. But I couldn't live with myself if I stayed quiet. My brother wouldn't forgive me, and I wouldn't forgive myself. Sarah hugged her. Thank you. You saved a man's life, Dr. Quinn. That's what doctors are supposed to do. Someone needed to stand up for you. They entered the hearing room together. It was packed. David Chen and his family sat in the front row. Marcus Reeves was there in dress uniform. Colonel Walsh sat beside him. There were reporters, medical professionals, other people Sarah didn't recognize. And at the front table, looking considerably less confident than usual, sat Preston Sterling and his attorney. The board chair, Dr. Elizabeth Kim, called the hearing to order. We're here to review a complaint filed against Dr. Preston Michael Sterling III regarding his conduct during a medical emergency on November 17th. Dr. Sterling, you've been accused of performing a dangerous procedure against medical advice, falsifying records, and retaliating against a colleague who attempted to intervene. How do you respond? Sterling's attorney stood. My client denies all wrongdoing. He performed an emergency procedure to save a patient's life. That the patient survived is testament to his skill. As for the allegations of retaliation, Dr. Sarah Quinn was dismissed for insubordination, not for medical judgment. We have security footage that tells a different story, Dr. Kim said. She nodded to an assistant who queued up the video. The entire room watched in silence as the footage played. Sterling ordering Sarah out, Sterling removing the rebar, the catastrophic bleeding. Sarah running back in, the surgery, David Chen's pressure stabilizing. Sterling's face during it all, first arrogant, then panicked, then shocked. When it ended, the room was silent. Dr. Sterling, Dr. Kim said, can you explain your decision to remove the tamponating foreign body without vascular control? Sterling's jaw worked. I made a judgment call, in the moment. Patient was unstable. I believed the rebar was causing more harm than good. And Dr. Quinn advised against this. Dr. Quinn is not a trauma surgeon. She's an emergency physician. I outrank her. My decision superseded hers. Actually, Dr. Kim said, according to records we've obtained from the Department of Defense, Dr. Quinn is a board-certified trauma surgeon with extensive combat experience. She separated from the Army with the rank of major and received numerous commendations for her surgical skills under fire. Sterling's face went white. You didn't know this? Dr. Kim asked. No. That wasn't in her hospital file. Because she didn't include it. She applied for an emergency medicine position, not a surgical one. But that doesn't change the fact that she was qualified, arguably more qualified than you, to make that call. Dr. Kim turned to Sarah. Dr. Quinn, would you like to speak? Sarah stood. Her knees protested, but she made it to the front of the room. She looked at Sterling, at this man who'd mocked her, belittled her, tried to destroy her career. Dr. Sterling, she said quietly, you're a good surgeon. Your technical skills are excellent. You're smart. You're quick. And in a different situation, you might have made a different call. Sterling blinked, surprised by the compliment. But you made a mistake, Sarah continued. A big one. You removed that rebar because you panicked, because you needed to do something, and removing the obvious foreign body felt like action. But action without thought is just movement. And in medicine, that gets people killed. She took a breath. I don't think you're malicious. I think you're arrogant. I think you've been told you're brilliant for so long that you stopped listening to other voices. And when someone challenged you, especially someone you thought was beneath you, you couldn't handle it. I was trying to save his life, Sterling said. No, you were trying to be the hero. There's a difference. Sarah turned to the board. I spent 3 years in Afghanistan. I saw a lot of young doctors come through, brilliant kids, top of their classes, full of confidence. And you know what happened to them? She paused. The good ones learned to listen. They learned that experience matters. That the old grizzled medic who looks like he's been through hell might actually know something they don't. The bad ones, she looked back at Sterling. The bad ones kept thinking they were the smartest person in the room, right up until they killed someone. Dr. Quinn? Sterling said, his voice strained. I'm sorry, I didn't know about your background. If you had, you would have treated me differently. Sarah shook her head. That's the problem, Dr. Sterling. You should treat everyone with respect. The nurse, the janitor, the old doctor with shaky hands. Because you never know what they've seen, what they've done, what they know. She turned back to the board. I don't want Dr. Sterling's license revoked. He's too talented for that. But he needs oversight. He needs humility. And he needs to learn that medicine is a team sport, not a solo performance. Dr. Kim nodded. Thank you, Dr. Quinn. Dr. Sterling, this board's decision is as follows. You will be placed on probationary status for 18 months. During this time, you will undergo mandatory training in medical ethics, team communication, and emergency decision-making. You will also be required to work under supervision for all trauma cases. Any violation of these terms will result in immediate license suspension. Sterling's shoulders slumped. Furthermore, Dr. Kim continued, we are recommending that St. Jude's Medical Center review its policies regarding physician disputes and patient safety. The fact that Dr. Quinn was fired for saving a life is unconscionable. She looked at Sarah. Dr. Quinn, on behalf of this board, I want to thank you for your service, both military and civilian. Your actions exemplify what it means to be a physician. Thank you. The room erupted in applause. Sarah stood there, overwhelmed, as people clapped and stood. David Chen was crying. Marcus was saluting. Jennifer was beaming. And Sterling just sat there, looking smaller than she'd ever seen him. After the hearing, Sarah found herself surrounded by people wanting to shake her hand, thank her, interview her. She declined most of it, slipping away to a quiet hallway. Sterling found her there. Dr. Quinn, he said. Can we talk? Sarah considered refusing, but something in his face, genuine remorse maybe, made her nod. I'm sorry, Sterling said, for everything, the way I treated you, the things I said. I am an arrogant ass. Yes, you are. He laughed bitterly. Fair enough. I guess I just wanted you to know that I'm going to do better. Take the training, learn from this, and maybe someday I'll be half the doctor you are. Sarah studied him. You want to know the secret? What? Secret? To being a good doctor. Sarah leaned against the wall. It's not about being the smartest. It's not about having the best hands. It's about giving a damn. Really giving a damn. About the patients, about your colleagues, about the janitor who cleans your OR. She met his eyes. You've got the skills, Dr. Sterling. Now you need to develop the character, and that's harder than any surgery. Sterling nodded slowly. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you come back into that trauma bay? You were fired. You could have just left. Why risk everything to save him? Sarah smiled. Because a long time ago, someone told me that being a doctor means never giving up on a patient, even when it's hard, even when it costs you, even when everyone else has quit. Who told you that? A man named William Chen. He was my commanding officer, and he was David's uncle. Sterling's eyes widened. You knew him? He taught me everything that matters. Not the technical stuff. I learned that in school. But the important things. Honor, duty, caring for people even when they can't pay you back. She pushed off the wall. David Chen deserved a chance, and I wasn't going to let him die just because some arrogant surgeon said it was hopeless. There's always hope, Dr. Sterling. Always. You just have to be brave enough to fight for it. She walked away, leaving Sterling standing alone in the hallway. The fallout from the medical board hearing was swift and brutal. The next day, the Chicago Tribune ran a front-page story. War hero doctor fired for saving life. Hospital faces scrutiny. The article included everything. Sarah's service record, the security footage, stills, not video to protect privacy, interviews with David Chen's family, and a scathing critique of St. Jude's policies. By noon, it had been picked up by national news. By evening, it was trending on social media. St. Jude's Medical Center found itself in a PR nightmare. Dr. Morrison's phone rang constantly. Patients were calling to complain. Donors were threatening to withdraw funding. Other hospitals were poaching their staff. And through it all, one question kept coming up. How could you fire someone for saving a life? Morrison called an emergency meeting with the hospital's board of directors. We need to do damage control, he said. Now. Damage control? Board chair Margaret Sullivan's voice was icy. James, you fired a decorated war veteran for performing life-saving surgery. What exactly did you think was going to happen? Sterling said she was insubordinate. Sterling is a liability. Margaret slammed her hand on the table. He's been the subject of 4 complaints this year alone. Nurses have reported his behavior. Residents have complained about his treatment of them. And you promoted him anyway because his father sits on the board at Northwestern. Morrison paled. I didn't save it. Margaret turned to Angela. Torres. What's our legal exposure? Significant, Torres said. Dr. Quinn could sue for wrongful termination. The Chen family could sue for medical malpractice, not against Quinn, against Sterling in the hospital. We could face regulatory action from the state health department. And if other employees come forward about Sterling's behavior, we could be looking at a hostile work environment lawsuit. Jesus, Morrison muttered. Furthermore, Torres continued, several major donors have already called. They're unhappy. The Martinez Foundation is threatening to pull $5 million in funding. The Thompson Trust is reviewing their grant, and the Veterans Affairs Liaison has expressed serious concerns about our treatment of military personnel. Margaret stood. Here's what's going to happen. First, Dr. Morrison, you're suspended pending an investigation into your handling of this matter. Second, Dr. Sterling's promotion to medical director is revoked. He remains on staff under the medical board's probationary terms, but with no administrative authority. Third, we are going to publicly apologize to Dr. Quinn and offer her reinstatement with full back pay and benefits. She won't take it, Morrison said. Then we'll offer her a consulting position, training role, something that shows we value her expertise. And fourth, Margaret's voice turned to steel. We are going to implement new policies to prevent this from ever happening again. No doctor gets fired for advocating for a patient. Period. Morrison slumped in his chair. This is going to cost millions. It should, Margaret said. We made a mistake, a serious one, and we're going to own it, fix it, and do better. That's what integrity looks like. Sarah learned about all of this from Jennifer, who'd somehow maintained her network despite being fired. They want you back, Jennifer said over coffee at a diner near Sarah's apartment. Full reinstatement. Department head. Position. Basically whatever you want. Sarah stirred her coffee. I don't want to go back. I know, I told them you wouldn't, but I figured you should hear the offer. What about you? Are they offering you your job back? Jennifer grinned. Actually, I got a better offer. Northwestern Memorial, trauma unit, better pay, better hours, and they specifically mentioned that they were impressed by my ethical courage in the St. Jude's situation. That's wonderful. It is. And Dr. Quinn, Sarah, I just want to say thank you for showing me what it means to stand up for what's right, even when it costs you. Sarah reached across the table and squeezed Jennifer's hand. You did that yourself. I'm proud of you. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. So, what are you going to do? Jennifer asked. If you're not going back to St. Jude's? Sarah pulled out the card Colonel Walsh had given her. I got a job offer, teaching position at Walter Reed, training the next generation of combat surgeons. Are you going to take it? I think so. It feels right, like coming home. When do you start? First of the year. They're giving me time to get settled, find a place in D.C., all that. Sarah paused. There's one thing I need to do first, though. What's that? Say goodbye to someone. St. Jude's Medical Center looked the same as it had 3 weeks ago. Same glass and steel, same revolving doors, same fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. But Sarah felt different walking through those doors. She wasn't sneaking in. She wasn't trying to be invisible. She was walking in with her head held high. Dr. Quinn, the receptionist, Rosa, who Sarah had treated for bronchitis 2 months ago, jumped up. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. What they did to you was wrong. Thank you, Rosa. Is David Chen still a patient here? He was discharged yesterday, but he's here visiting. Room 412, visiting his former roommate. Sarah took the elevator up. The doors opened on the 4th floor, and she was struck by how familiar it all felt. The smell of antiseptic and cafeteria food, the sound of monitors beeping, the shuffle of nurses moving between rooms. This had been her world, her life, and she'd been good at it. Room 412's door was ajar. Sarah knocked gently. Come in, a voice called. She entered to find David Chen sitting beside a hospital bed. In the bed was a man in his 60s, clearly post-operative with drains, and monitors everywhere. Dr. Quinn! David stood carefully, still moving like someone who'd recently been impaled by rebar. I didn't expect to see you here. I wanted to check on you before I left Chicago, see how you were healing. I'm good, really good. Surgeon said your repair was perfect. Didn't even need to revise it. He gestured to the man in the bed. This is Robert Patterson. He's recovering from cardiac surgery. Quintuple bypass. Quintuple. Sarah moved to check the monitors automatically. That's impressive. How are you feeling, Mayor Patterson? Like I got hit by a truck, Patterson said with a weak smile. but alive. Thanks to Dr. Sterling, apparently. Sarah's hand paused on the monitor. Sterling did your surgery? Yeah. I was told he's one of the best cardiac surgeons in the city. Though between you and me, Patterson lowered his voice, he seems different lately, more careful. Takes more time to explain things. Actually listens when I talk. David caught Sarah's eye and smiled. People can change, Sarah said softly, when they're given the right motivation. She checked Patterson's vitals, all stable, healing nicely, and wished him well. Outside, David walked with her to the elevator. I heard you're leaving Chicago, he said. Walter Reed, teaching position. That's amazing. You're going to train the next generation? Something like that. David stopped, turning to face her. Dr. Quinn, Sarah, I don't know how to... Thank you for what you did. You saved my life. You gave me a chance to see my kids grow up, to meet this baby. He placed his hand on his own stomach, mimicking his wife's gesture. To grow old with my wife. I owe you everything. You don't owe me anything. I was just doing my job. No, you were doing more than that. You were being who you are. A hero. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. I'm not a hero, David. I'm just a doctor who refuses to give up. That's what makes you a hero. He hugged her, gently, mindful of his still healing abdomen. Uncle Bill would be proud of you, he whispered. I wish he could have seen this. He did, Sarah said. I think he's been watching the whole time. They said their goodbyes, and Sarah headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, she caught a glimpse of herself in the polished metal. Gray hair, lined face, tired eyes, but standing straight, head high. Not invisible anymore. The lobby had one more surprise waiting. Preston. Sterling stood near the entrance, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. Sarah considered walking past him, but something made her stop. Dr. Sterling? Dr. Quinn, I heard you were here. He took a breath. I wanted to apologize. Again. Properly this time. You already apologized. I know, but I wanted to do it here, in this building, where I treated you like garbage. His voice cracked slightly. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about giving a damn, and I realized I haven't. Not really. I've been so focused on being the best that I forgot to be good. Sarah nodded slowly. I'm starting the ethics training next week, Sterling continued, and I've been meeting with some of the residents and nurses. Apologizing, listening, trying to be better. That's good. I also wanted you to know... Sterling pulled out his phone, showing her a photo. It was a framed picture, hanging in what looked like an office. The picture was of a surgery in progress. Sarah's surgery. From the security footage. This is in my office now, Sterling said. To remind me that being a good surgeon isn't about being the star. It's about doing what's right. Even when it's hard. Even when it costs you. Sarah felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, exactly, but something close. Dr. Sterling, Preston, I'm not going to tell you that what you did was okay. It wasn't. You were cruel, arrogant, and dangerous. I know. But Sarah met his eyes. I believe people can change. I've seen soldiers become peacemakers. I've seen broken people heal. I've seen the worst of humanity become the best. So if you're serious about this, if you really want to be better, then I believe you can be. Sterling's eyes were wet. Thank you. Don't thank me. Prove it. Every day. With every patient, with every colleague. Be the doctor you should have been all along. I will, I promise. Sarah extended her hand. Sterling shook it. Good luck. Dr. Sterling. You too, Dr. Quinn. And thank you for not giving up on me either. Sarah smiled and walked out of St. Jude's Medical Center for the last time. The Chicago wind hit her face, cold and sharp, but the sun was shining. And Sarah Quinn, Major Sarah Quinn, the ghost surgeon, the woman who'd saved more lives than she could count, was finally going home. Walter Reed National Military Medical Center sits in Bethesda, Maryland, a massive complex that serves as the flagship of military medicine. Sarah had been there before, during her active duty years, but seeing it now felt different. This time she wasn't visiting, she was coming home. Colonel Walsh met her at the entrance on January 2nd. Welcome back, Major Quinn. It's just doctor now, Sarah said. I separated, remember? Actually, about that. Walsh handed her a folder. The Secretary of the Army has approved your recall to active duty. Temporary commission, no combat deployment required. You'll hold the rank of lieutenant colonel and serve as director of combat trauma training. Sarah stared at the folder. You're promoting me? You've earned it. Twice over. Your Silver Star, your service record, and frankly, your surgical skills speak for themselves. I don't know what to say. Say yes. We need you, Sarah. We need someone who's been there. Who knows what these kids are going to face when they deploy? Sarah opened the folder. Inside was a new commission certificate, a set of LTC rank insignia, and a letter from the Secretary of the Army. The Secretary of the Army knows who I am? Everyone knows who you are now, Walsh said with a smile. The ghost surgeon. The woman who refused to let a man die. You're kind of famous. Sarah groaned. I didn't want famous. Too bad. You got it anyway. Come on, let me show you your office. The office was on the third floor of the main hospital building, with windows overlooking the grounds. It was spacious, professional, and came with a desk that actually looked comfortable. Your first class starts Monday, Walsh said. 20 medical students, all commissioned officers, all heading for a deployment in 6 months. They're smart, eager, and terrified. As they should be. Exactly. So your job is to prepare them. Not just the technical stuff. They'll get that in their surgical rotations. But the mental preparation, the emotional preparation, how to perform under fire, how to make impossible decisions, how to save lives when everything's going to hell. Sarah set down her briefcase. I can do that. I know you can. There's one more thing. Walsh pulled out another folder. We've received requests from 3 other medical centers, Johns Hopkins, Mass General, and UCLA, asking if you'd be willing to guest lecture on trauma surgery under extreme conditions. They want me to teach civilian doctors. Military medicine has things to teach civilian medicine, and vice versa. Cross-pollination of knowledge benefits everyone. Sarah thought about Sterling, about the residents at St. Jude's who'd watched her save David Chen's life. I'll do it, but only if the hospitals agree to provide free training to VA medical staff. Our veterans deserve the best care, and their doctors need the best training. Walsh grinned. Already included in the contract. I'm starting to think you should be running this whole program. Don't even joke about that. Who's joking? Monday morning came fast. Sarah stood at the front of a lecture hall looking at 20 faces. Most were in their late 20s or early 30s. Some were fresh out of medical school. Others had completed residencies and were doing military fellowships. All of them looked scared. Good morning, Sarah said. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Quinn. You can call me Colonel Quinn, ma'am, or if we're being informal, just Quinn. I'm going to be your primary instructor for combat trauma. Training. She clicked to the first slide. It was a photo of a field hospital in Afghanistan. This is where I worked for 3 years. This tent, she pointed, was my OR. That bucket was where I scrubbed. Those cots were where we kept patients post-op. It's not Walter Reed. It's not clean. It's not comfortable. But it's where I performed 847 surgeries and saved 783 lives. The students leaned forward. The 64 I couldn't save haunt me every day. I remember their names, their faces, their injuries. And I'm going to tell you about them too. Because learning from success is easy. Learning from failure is hard. But it's necessary. She clicked to the next slide. A young soldier, badly injured, being worked on by multiple medical personnel. Combat trauma is different from civilian trauma. In a civilian ER, you usually have time, resources, specialists down the hall, blood bank downstairs. In combat, you have what's in your aid bag, what's in the tent, and your own 2 hands. Maybe a medic who's barely old enough to drink. Maybe a chopper pilot who's getting shot at while trying to evacuate your patient. Next slide. A chart showing survival rates. If you can keep a combat casualty alive for the first hour, the golden hour, their survival rate jumps to 90%. But that hour is chaos, explosions, gunfire, patients arriving faster than you can triage, and you have to make decisions that no one should ever have to make. She paused, meeting their eyes. Who do you save when you have 3 critical patients and can only treat 1? How do you perform surgery when mortars are falling close enough to shake your instruments? What do you do when you run out of blood, or antibiotics, or hope? The room was silent. These are the questions I'm going to help you answer. Not with easy solutions, there are none, but with frameworks, experience, tools to help you survive what's coming. Because, make no mistake, her voice hardened, what's coming is hell. And I'm going to prepare you for it. A hand went up. Captain James Morrison, no relation to the St. Jude's administrator, thankfully. Yes, Captain? Ma'am, I heard about what you did in Chicago, saving that patient when the civilian doctor gave up. Is that something you'll be teaching us? Sarah smiled. Yes, it's called never giving up when there's even a fraction of a chance, and it's the most important lesson I can teach you. The weeks flew by. Sarah threw herself into teaching with an intensity she hadn't felt in years. She lectured on damage control surgery, on field blood transfusions, on performing emergency procedures with minimal equipment. But more importantly, she taught them the things they couldn't learn from textbooks. Your hands are going to shake, she told them one afternoon, holding up her own trembling hands. Mine do, every day. It's nerve damage from an injury I sustained during a mortar attack. But you know what? They don't shake when I'm operating. Because when you're focused on saving a life, everything else falls away. She taught them about triage under fire. You see 3 casualties. First has a sucking chest wound, conscious but struggling. Second has bilateral lower extremity amputations, unconscious, barely breathing. Third has multiple shrapnel wounds, screaming in pain. Who do you treat first? The students debated. Some said the chest wound, airway, breathing, circulation. Some said the amputations, highest risk of death. Wrong, Sarah said. You treat the third one, the screaming one. But he's the least critical. Exactly. You give him morphine, slap on some bandages, and move on. Takes 60 seconds. Now he's stable and quiet, and you can focus on the other two. The chest wound gets a chest seal and a nasal airway. Another 2 minutes. Then you spend 10 minutes trying to save the bilateral amp, knowing you might fail, but at least you gave him a chance. She paused. Triage isn't about saving everyone. It's about saving the most people possible with the resources you have. It's brutal, it's unfair, and it's necessary. By March, Sarah's students weren't students anymore. They were combat surgeons in training, confident and capable. But there was one lesson left. We're doing a simulation, Sarah announced one morning. Full scenario, mass casualty event. You'll have limited supplies, limited time, and limited help. I'll be observing, not assisting. The simulation took place in a mock field hospital they'd set up in a training area, complete with mannequins, fake blood, and sound effects. Explosions, gunfire, shouting. Sarah watched as her students triaged, operated, and managed chaos. They made mistakes. Of course they did. Captain Morrison forgot to check for a pneumothorax, and his patient died. Captain Chen, yes, another Chen, though no relation to David, spent too long on one patient and lost 2 others. Lieutenant Parks panicked when the mortar sounds got too close and froze for 30 seconds. But they also did things right. Lieutenant Ortiz, named after Sarah's old pilot friend, another coincidence, performed a perfect cricothyroidostomy on a mannequin with a crushed larynx. Captain Williams managed a hemorrhage control on an arterial bleed that would have killed a patient in seconds. And when one of the mannequins died, despite their best efforts, Lieutenant Parks stopped, took a breath, and moved on to the next patient without spiraling. After the simulation, Sarah gathered them together. You all made mistakes today. Good. Better to make them here than downrange where real people die. But you also showed me something important. She looked at each of them. You didn't give up, even when it was hard. Even when you were losing, you kept fighting for every patient. That's what makes a combat surgeon. Not perfect technique, though that helps. Not flawless judgment, though that's important. But the refusal to quit when someone's life is on the line. Morrison raised his hand. Ma'am, how do you deal with the ones you can't save? The ones who die despite everything you do? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. You carry them, she said finally. Every single one. Their names, their faces, the last words they said. You carry them because they deserve to be remembered. Because their deaths should mean something. And because if you forget them, you stop being human. She pulled out a small notebook from her pocket. It was worn, stained, filled with handwriting. This is my list. Every soldier I couldn't save. I write down their names, their injuries, what I tried, what went wrong. I read it sometimes, not to torture myself, but to remember, to honor them, and to make sure I do better next time. The students were silent. You're going to lose patience, Sarah continued. It's inevitable, and it's going to hurt like hell, but you can't let that stop you from trying to save the next one. That's the burden we carry as doctors. The knowledge that we can't save everyone, but the responsibility to try anyway. Lieutenant Ortiz spoke up. Ma'am, is that what you were thinking about in Chicago, when you went back into that trauma bay? Sarah smiled. No. In Chicago, I was thinking about David Chen's kids, about his pregnant wife, about the fact that he deserved a chance to live, and I was thinking about my old CO who taught me that hope isn't about statistics or odds. Hope is about refusing to accept the unacceptable, even when everyone else has given up, especially then. 6 months later, Sarah stood in her office at Walter Reed, looking at the photos on her wall. Her students had all graduated and deployed. She'd received emails from most of them, updates from field hospitals, photos of successful surgeries, thank you notes for preparing them. 3 of them had already saved lives in situations where conventional wisdom would have said to give up. Sarah was proud. On her desk was a new photo. Her most recent class, 30 students this time, demand was growing, standing together in their dress uniforms, Sarah in the center, the ghost surgeon and her protégés. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Come in. Marcus Reeves entered, now a major himself. He'd been assigned to Walter Reed as a liaison officer, working with wounded warriors. Ma'am, there's someone here to see you. Who? You'll want to see this yourself. Sarah followed him down to the lobby. Standing there in a suit that probably cost more than Sarah's car was Preston Sterling. Dr. Quinn, he said, I hope this isn't a bad time. Sarah blinked. What are you doing here? I wanted to show you something. He pulled out his phone, showing her an article. It was from the Journal of the American Medical Association. The title, Humility in Surgical Practice, Lessons from Error and Recovery, by Dr. Preston M. Sterling III and Dr. Sarah Quinn. Sarah's eyes widened. What is this? I wrote a paper about what happened in Chicago, about my mistakes, about what you taught me, and I was hoping you'd agree to be co-author. Your name should be on it as much as mine. Sarah read the abstract. It was good, really good. Honest, unflinching, and focused on improving patient care through better communication and teamwork. You wrote this? I did. Well, most of it. I was hoping you'd review it, maybe add your perspective, if you're willing. Sarah looked at him. At this man who'd once been her antagonist, who'd mocked her, fired her, tried to destroy her. And she saw something different now. Not arrogance, not cruelty. Humility and hope. I'll review it, she said, but I want one change. Anything. Add a dedication to David Chen, who deserved a chance, and to all the patients who teach us to be better doctors. Sterling smiled. Done. They shook hands. How's St. Jude's? Sarah asked. Different. Better. Dr. Morrison was removed. New administration came in. They've implemented a lot of changes. Patient advocacy programs, physician oversight committees, better communication protocols. It's actually becoming a good place to work. And you? I'm off probation next month. Clean record. No complaints. And I've been teaching residents, trying to pass on what you taught me. Which is, Sterling smiled, that the best surgeons aren't the ones who never make mistakes. They're the ones who learn from them and do better next time. Sarah nodded. Good answer. That evening, Sarah received a video call. It was from Captain Morrison, calling from a field hospital in an undisclosed location. Ma'am! His face was dirty, exhausted, but grinning. I had to tell you. We had a mass cal today. IED hit a convoy. 6 casualties, all critical. Sarah's heart clenched. How many made it? All of them. All 6. Because we used your triage protocol. We didn't panic. We didn't try to be heroes. We just did the work, one patient at a time, and they all made it. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. That's incredible, Captain. It's because of you, ma'am. You taught us this. You prepared us. And because of that, 6 soldiers are going home to their families. You did the work, Captain. I just showed you the way. Well, the way saved lives. So thank you. From all of us. After the call ended, Sarah sat in silence. 6 lives, 6 families who would have their loved ones back. 6 chances at futures that could have been lost. This was why she'd come back. This was why she'd left the shadows. This was why she'd reclaimed who she'd always been. The ghost surgeon. Not because she was invisible, but because she appeared when she was needed most, saved lives that shouldn't have been saved, and then quietly moved on to the next patient. 1 year later, Sarah stood at the podium of the American College of Surgeons annual conference. 10,000 surgeons from around the world were in attendance. She'd been asked to give the keynote address. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah began, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Quinn. Some of you know me as the ghost surgeon. Others know me as the doctor who was fired for saving a life. Still others know me as the woman who refuses to give up. She paused, looking at the massive audience. I'm here to talk about hope. She clicked to her first slide. It showed David Chen, healthy and happy, holding his newborn son. This is David Chen. A year and a half ago, he fell 3 stories onto rebar. He was dying. The chief surgeon said there was no hope. And technically, by all medical statistics, he was right. David's survival probability was less than 5%. His injuries were catastrophic. Any reasonable doctor would have called it. Next slide. The security footage from St. Jude's. But I'm not a reasonable doctor. I'm a stubborn one. And I refused to accept that 5% meant 0. So I disobeyed orders, performed unauthorized surgery, and saved his life. Then I got fired for it. Nervous laughter rippled through the audience. And you know what? I'd do it again, in a heartbeat. Because hope isn't about statistics. Hope is about refusing to accept the unacceptable. It's about fighting for every patient, every time, even when the odds say you'll lose. She clicked through slides showing her military service, her students, her successes and failures. I've performed over 1,000 surgeries in my career. I've saved hundreds of lives. And I've lost 64 patients that still haunt me. Those 64 taught me that we can't save everyone. But they also taught me that we have to try. We have to fight. We have to care. Final slide. A quote from Lieutenant Colonel William Chen. Heroes don't retire. They just change battlefields. My old commanding officer told me that, Sarah said. And I didn't believe him for 12 years. I tried to disappear, to become invisible, to hide from who I was and what I'd done. But here's what I learned. You can't hide from yourself. You can't run from your purpose, and you can't quit being who you're meant to be. She looked out at the audience. Every one of you in this room is a healer. You've dedicated your lives to saving others. And sometimes that's going to be hard. You're going to face impossible choices, terrible odds, patients who should die but don't deserve to. And when that happens, I want you to remember David Chen. Remember that 5% isn't zero. Remember that hope is a choice. And remember that you became a doctor to fight for people, not to give up on them. Standing ovation. Sarah stood at the podium, overwhelmed, as 10,000 surgeons rose to their feet and applauded. For her message, for the reminder of why they'd all chosen this profession. As the applause died down, Sarah stepped away from the podium. Waiting in the wings was Marcus Reeves, now a full colonel, walking without a limp. New prosthetics, better technology. Hell of a speech, ma'am, he said. Thanks, I was terrified. Couldn't tell. You looked like a natural up there. Sarah laughed. I'm a surgeon, not a speaker. You're whatever you need to be in the moment. That's what makes you the ghost. They walked together through the convention center, past displays of new surgical equipment, past booths for medical schools and hospitals recruiting talent. At one booth, Sarah stopped. It was St. Jude's Medical Center. Preston Sterling stood there, talking to prospective residents. He'd been promoted to medical director, the position he'd wanted all along, but this time he'd earned it through competence and character, not connections. He saw Sarah and excused himself. Dr. Quinn, or should I say Lieutenant Colonel Quinn? Sarah's fine. I wanted to thank you again for giving me another chance, for teaching me what it means to be a real doctor. You taught yourself, Preston. I just pointed you in the right direction. Still, I wouldn't be here without you. He gestured to the booth. We've implemented all the changes we talked about. Patient advocacy, physician oversight, better communication, and we've had 0 complaints against any surgical staff in 18 months. That's incredible. It's a start. And Sarah? He hesitated. We'd love to have you back. Not full-time, but as a visiting surgeon. Teach our residents, share your experience, help us be better. Sarah considered. I'll think about it. That's all I can ask. Final scene. 2 years after the incident at St. Jude's. Sarah stood in the Walter Reed Cemetery, a crisp autumn day, leaves falling around her. She was placing flowers on a grave. Lieutenant Colonel William Chen, U.S. Army beloved commander, teacher, friend. Hey, Uncle Bill, Sarah said softly. I know it's been a while. I've been busy, teaching, saving lives, being the doctor you always said I could be. The wind rustled the leaves. I wanted you to know that David is doing great. His kids are growing up strong. His youngest son is named William after you. He's 2 now. Looks just like David. She smiled, tears in her eyes. And I wanted to tell you that you were right. Heroes don't retire. We just change battlefields. I'm not in Afghanistan anymore. I'm not in a tent with mortars falling, but I'm still fighting, still saving lives, still refusing to give up. A hand touched her shoulder. Marcus Reeves stood beside her, his 4-year-old daughter, Sarah, named after her, holding his hand. Thought you might be here, Marcus said. Paying my respects. Little Sarah looked up at her namesake. Daddy says you saved his life. I did my best. Are you a superhero? Big Sarah laughed. No, sweetheart. I'm just a doctor who doesn't give up. That sounds like a superhero to me, Marcus grinned. She's not wrong, ma'am. They stood together at the grave, 3 generations connected by one man's wisdom and one woman's refusal to quit. Later, as Sarah walked back to her car, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Captain Morrison, still deployed. Ma'am, just saved another one. Used your technique from class. He's alive because of you. Because you taught us never to give up. Thank you. Attached was a photo of a young soldier, bandaged but alive, giving a thumbs up from his hospital bed. Sarah smiled, saved the photo, and added it to her collection. Another life saved. Another family kept whole. Another reason to keep fighting. She got in her car and drove back to Walter Reed, where her next class was waiting. 25 new students. 25 new doctors who would deploy in 6 months. 25 more chances to pass on what she'd learned. That hope is a choice. That every patient deserves a chance. That the best doctors aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who refuse to quit. And that sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is simply refuse to accept that there's no hope. Because there's always hope. Always. You just have to be brave enough to fight for it. Subscribe for more incredible true stories of courage, resilience, and never giving up. Like, if this story inspired you to fight for what's right, share to remind someone that hope is always worth fighting for. What would you have done in Sarah's position? Let us know in the comments.